Thanks for checking out the I Am More Than podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Wessel, a former Miss Arizona USA professional model and founder of More Than Inc. This is the first episode of 2021, and I am so proud of all of us for making it through 2020, and I hope you're feeling refreshed and optimistic for a new year. This week's guest is all about spreading good vibes. She's a professional model and content creator who's passionate about saving the planet and speaking out against social issues. We chat all about life as a full-time model with tons of advice for aspiring models stepping into the industry. From comparison to tapping into your creativity to diversifying yourself in an oversaturated market. We also dive into the reality of being half Black in 2020 and how she's discovering her identity in a divided world. From educating herself to having eye-opening conversations with friends, family, and her followers, she's a firm believer that when we come together, we can make a true change. She's one of the most down-to-earth, raw, and unfiltered women we've had on the show. I'm excited to introduce you to my friend, Sophia Baller. Welcome to the I Am More Than podcast. I honestly can't tell you how excited I am that you're actually here.
I'm so excited to be here. Literally. I feel like
cheesing so hard.
Me too. My face already hurts and we've just gotten started. So I'm like, okay, well, that's a good sign. But I'm like, all the times that we've tried to set it up and it's fallen through, I get even more excited. So like today is yeah,
today's the day.
We're here. It's time. Let's go.
And we were just talking about the fact that I feel like I know you very well. And I feel like we've been friends for a long time. And when I actually sat back and thought about it, we have met each other in person one time.
We've got one picture though. That is like the staple of a friendship. It's like, do we have a photo? We do. So at least we have one. We have that. But I swear, I feel like I know you. I feel like I know your man. I'm like, oh, there they go. You know what I mean? Like I've never met him. I've never seen you two together, but I feel like I'm in your life, which is
you
great.
Are. I just think that you have like another level of coolness to you.
Oh my God.
That I'm like, I just want to like understand how you are the way you are and soak up a little bit so I can be as cool as you.
Dude, that's going to make me smile even harder. Thank you.
Good.
I don't feel like that at all, but thank you.
Of course. And like I was saying, we met each other in New York. We were just having a night out. We had both, I think, just gotten signed with Wilhelmina. I had gotten signed a couple months prior.
That was me too. Yeah.
Yeah. We kind of started at the same time. And then you moved back to LA shortly after we met.
So basically, I had gotten signed to Wilhelmina, Chicago a few months before I went to New York. So I'm originally from Southern Illinois. So Chicago was kind of like the biggest city closest to me. So I had been signed with an agency in St. Louis for like 2 years and there's not shit to do in St. Louis. Okay. But being signed in general, I was like, yep, I did that. You know what I mean? But I wasn't doing anything. And I was, in school. I went to college for about 2 years while I was signed in St. Louis. And all I could think about was modeling. And I was like, okay, I need to actually like put all of my effort into this and see where I can go because right now nothing's happening. So basically I decided to leave my agency in St. Louis, go to Chicago for a week. And I met up with a couple of agencies and I ended up meeting with Wilhelmina and they signed me that day. And that was like still huge. Top 5 best memories of my life because I was just like, wow, it was amazing. So I lived in Chicago. I lived in the model apartment for about 3 to 4 months there, testing out the market. And I was like, okay, had a couple clients, but there again wasn't too much to do in Chicago. So in the meantime, Wilhelmina in New York had picked me up and they were like, hey, you should come out here for a couple months, test it out. And I was like, whoa, this is next level. I was like, I'm going to New York. Like, wow. And I never wanted to go to New York. Like I had no desire. Even though I loved modeling, like every movie where the world was ending, like took place in New York. And I was like, fuck that. I'm not going. Like, I don't need to be in Times Square. All the buildings are crashing. Like literally that was like the only thought that I had of New York. And I was like, I'm terrified. Subways, can't do it. I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to like it. But I was like, I'll go because it has to do with modeling. And I was just like, let's do it. So I'd never been to New York. Just hopped on the plane, packed my bags, got to the model apartment, and I was there for about 4 months. Wow. Met you, met so many other amazing women that is just like, it feels like a movie sometimes. Like again, thankfully, we're still connected on social media, but it's just like now everybody's like around the world, and like Hungary and like China. And I'm like, holy crap. Like it was amazing to meet all of these people in one city. And now we're spread out, but we're still connected. But basically, I was in New York for a couple of months, and then things didn't really work out the way that I was hoping they would, because I'd been in New York for about 4 months and I had gone on like 3 castings. I had like 1 shoot. I ended up booking 2 shows in Fashion Week, which I was like
Huge.
high on. And it was a big deal. You know what I mean? Like I was super excited, but my agents at the time were just kind of like, wasn't super excited about it. And I was like, oh shit. I mean, okay. So I ended up going home back to Carbondale for a few months. And then I was like, well, you know what? While this is going on, I'm going to test out LA and see how that goes. So that was basically where LA started. And now I've been here for almost 3 years, which is pretty crazy, because it initially was one of those where, like Chicago, New York, I was going to be here for a few months, test out the waters, and then see how it goes. And thankfully, everything was great when I first got out here. And this ended up being my market. And I ended up moving here. And I'm super excited about that. I love it here. And I always saw myself living in LA. But I mean, I knew it was going to happen. But even like every day I wake up and I'm like, holy crap, like I actually am living my dream that I've been thinking about. It's so wild.
Well, you had a lot of persistence to keep trying and then to go to other cities. And I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes I look back at myself like 4 years ago, just packing up and going to New York. And I'm like, what the hell was I thinking?
What was I thinking?
Like, I mean, who gave me the balls to do that?
The balls. Like, I am massive that we have to do that. Like, literally, I feel like every single girl that I've met in the model apartments, in the modeling industry, I'm like, we've got some balls, because this shit is really fucking hard. And the amount of no's, and like living in the model apartment, I was hearing all these stories about, like nightmare agents and like showing up to jobs and them like sending you like just horror stories. And to see that those girls were still there going after what they want, I'm like, this is really cool. You know what I mean? Like, the great part is we are able to connect on that level of like, oh, you've been through some shit. Okay, me too. Let's talk about it and like figure out how we're going to keep going. So that's been awesome. And I feel like, the industry will weed out some of the people. Like you'll get to a point where you're just like, hey, I can't do this. Or you're like, you know what? I'm going to keep going. But it's very hard. It's tough.
I have crazy respect for models that are living modeling, because that's really hard to do. It's easy to model for like fun and have that be an element to it, but still have a career or something outside of it. But the women who are relying on this to make their livelihood, I respect the hell out of. Dude, and it's a really close community.
It's wild. I'm not surprised that I'm still here, because I've known that I've always wanted this. But at the same time, some days I'm just like, whoa, this is tough, like when it's good, it's fucking awesome. And then when it's bad, it's like, okay, we're going there. We're going down. You know what I mean?
It can get bad quick.
It could go down a slippery slope. Like, I'm putting myself through this for what, but then you kind of have to like pull yourself up and you're like, this is what you're going for. This is why you're doing it. Like, and I have those memories of even like 4 years ago when we were in New York, and it's like, we were all babies. I was super fresh. You were fresh. You know what I mean? Yeah. And it's just like to see the growth that I've gone through since then. And even now I'm like, this feels like it's just the beginning, when it's like, really, I've been doing this for a long time, but I have to like go back. And once I remember those moments, I'm like, okay, this is what you're doing it for. Like you've overcome so much, like you're going to get there. But there are definitely days where you're like, why don't I do something normal? Like, why can't I just want a normal job? You know what I mean? With some like consistency. But
I feel
it's fucking crazy. It's like literally like right now, this morning, I just checked my schedule, and I keep like in my notes every job that I work, the dates, like how much it paid, just to keep track. And I was like, oh, it's been a little slow right now. I'm like, I almost haven't worked for like 3 weeks. But before 3 weeks, for about 2 months, I was working every day straight. So it was one of those things where it's like, it goes from high to low. And, you have to kind of just figure out how you're going to deal with it.
Yeah.
And before this year, I was in a pretty negative place when it came to my thoughts with modeling. With social media, I would open up my Instagram and I would see, other girls and even friends like working jobs that I wanted, or even just working in general. And I would be like, why didn't I get that? What did I do wrong? And you would get into this negative thought process where it's
Totally.
like, what did I do? Why am I not getting this? And I literally would wake up, check my phone for, castings, confirmations. And if I didn't have it, I would be pissed off. Like the day would just start negatively. And then I would just stay on my phone, refreshing, seeing if something came in, going back to Instagram, looking at who's working. Like it was such a negative thing. And it was playing a huge toll on my life. I was getting really irritated with Dylan quickly. I wasn't doing anything good for myself. I wasn't even taking the moment to be like, put your phone down, go do something else for a little bit. I just stuck with it. And if it wasn't for this quarantine, I would probably still be there. And that is one of those things where I'm like incredibly grateful for this time, because I really took the time to be like, bitch, you got to cut that out. Like you cannot be in the industry if you're going to keep doing that. You are going to kill yourself.
Yeah.
Your positivity is going to be gone if you keep doing that. So honestly, it took for a pandemic to cancel all work. Nobody was working. So I was like, okay, I don't have to worry about anybody else. Okay. You know what I mean? Like I didn't pick up my phone and look for an email because I knew it was going to be there. I was like, all right, what are we doing today? I don't know, but I don't have to worry about that. And that was such an interesting feeling because I was like, okay, is this you not liking what you do? No, it's just you needing to switch up what's going on, the way that you're thinking. And so it really took that initial cut off of everything work wise for everyone for me to kind of like go back and start over, where I was like, how are you going to fix this? And basically, it took doing work on myself to get back and be like, okay, now you can handle this. And I would say that I have, really high self-esteem, self-confidence, but even like the strongest people, it will take a toll on you. So whenever somebody asks me like, can anybody model? I'm like, yes and no. I don't recommend getting into the industry if you have a hard time with your self-esteem, your self-confidence, because it will fucking chip away very quickly. You know what I mean? And I had started to watch myself crumble in a sense where I was like, this is not me, but I'm letting this get to me. So basically, I just had to start fresh. And I was like, okay, you need to be genuinely happy for your friends and anybody in the industry that you like who is doing well at the time, because your time is going to come, but you have to be patient. And I basically just started to look at people once work started picking back up. And I was like, okay, I'm happy for them. Even if you have to tell yourself that, to force it for a little bit, eventually it's going to become a real thing. And I saw myself actually genuinely being happy for everybody, because I was like, wow, I hope people feel that way for me, because I know how hard I'm working to get here. And you never know how hard somebody else is working. So it's like, you need to be proud for their wins, because your wins are going to come as well.
Love your perspective on all of this. And I also love your self-awareness, because I think it takes a very self-aware person to be able to strip it all down and be like, okay, why am I the way that I am right now? Why do I feel this way? Yeah. And I think that you said something that just really resonated with me about even having a high self-esteem and high self-confidence doesn't really mean that you're not still struggling and struggling with insecurities.
Yeah. And it brings up ones that you don't even think that you have about yourself, in a sense. You know what I mean? Yep. And I even tell people, I'm like, modeling has been great for me, because in certain ways, it's really made me feel more secure about certain things about myself. Like I used to hate my curly hair before I got into the industry. And then every agent was like, that's your moneymaker. And I was like, ooh, it's my moneymaker.
Look at me go.
Okay. Yes. And I was like, let me actually stop straightening my hair and actually embrace my real curls. And that was something that I'll always be thankful to the industry for, because it made me fall in love with my natural hair. but it also, has pulled up insecurities in the sense that I never thought or realized that I had before, where it was like, you start looking at other people and you're like, well, why am I not booking that? And why are they like, what do they have that I don't? And it's like,
Yep.
that's not something I ever really thought that I had thoughts like that going on in my mind, but they bring them up. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And so that's one of those things where it's like, you have to really take care of the inside when you're in this industry. And anything that you do, you need to tap inside and be like, okay, I need to be the best version of myself to be doing this, that, or the third. But especially from my point with modeling, it's like, you got to be good on the inside before you can really do this, because it's so much.
Yeah,
It's
it
so
is.
much.
And in this industry, I mean, your body is your resume, your face is your
Yeah.
resume, you are your resume. And
Yeah.
like you just said, you have to start it from the inside out, because even if you look a certain way, you will burn out if you're not
Yeah.
being fueled from a
Yeah.
proper place.
Yes.
So, what are some things that you've been doing, you've been implementing to make sure that you're fueled from the inside out?
Yeah. Well, that was a really big one, honestly, that became apparent over quarantine, because like I said, before this had happened, I was in a really negative place in my career. I felt like I wasn't working. I felt like I was getting passed up. Like I felt like I was just getting left behind in the dust. And I was like, what is going on? I'm doing everything that I could be doing. So why are things not clicking? But it didn't take until everything shut down for me to realize that I had not been doing everything that I needed to be doing. I had basically lost my love and my passion for creating. I was just getting stuck into, am I making money? I didn't even care what the job was. I just wanted to be working because I was like, I need to make money. I need to make money. And that is not why I initially started modeling. I loved modeling, the whole aspect of it, creating images that made people excited or that made them want to look. I never wanted to do it for the money, but of course, that was a plus. You know what I mean?
Money's nice.
But yeah, it's great. But like, that wasn't why I wanted to do it. And I found myself just getting sucked into, am I working? Am I making money? Not, am I tapping into my creative side? Am I like trying new things and bettering myself as a model? And that was not happening. On top of myself, I wasn't taking good care of myself. I wasn't eating right. I wasn't, working out the way that I should be to make myself happy. And so quarantine opened my eyes to that. And basically, I refound my passion for modeling. Started, putting together little photo shoots again, which is what I initially started doing when I got interested at like 16. I was making crazy photo shoots. I was watching America's Next Top Model. I was pulling outfits and like doing the whole thing because that's what I loved. And then I realized that I had lost that over the way, where I was just getting sucked into caring about money, caring about being booked, and not caring about, well, am I becoming the model that I want to be? Like, this is a longevity thing for you, not just where's my check,
Yeah.
So I basically started finding things that refueled myself over quarantine. And that was just creating, all the ideas that I have in my mind or inspiration that I would find on Instagram or, like in 90s ads that I just fucking loved. I started putting things together in my closet, setting up my little tripod, finding my light,
I love it.
and taking pictures. And I was like, okay, this is the time to try new things, see if you like a pose, see if you hate it. And then I ended up getting Dylan into helping me take pictures. So that was even better. Because
Dream team.
I was like, now I've got a photographer. Let's do it. I got a couple like film cameras, Polaroid cameras, so that I could really just like create. And that really keeps me going now at this point. Whenever I'm like, okay, work is feeling slow, it's like, all right, time to pull out a concept. Like, what do you want to do? Because
that.
yeah. And it's like, when you're busy, which is great, and you're getting booked and you're making your money, that's what we're trying to do. But you need to take that time and be productive when you're not working, as opposed to sitting there and being like, ugh, why am I not working? I was like, okay, when things are slow, I'm going to start testing with photographers that I'm, making connections with, or having Dylan, come put together a little shoot with me. So that really keeps me going. It keeps me excited because I feel like I'm able to really express myself that way and to really differentiate myself from other models,
Yeah.
and that helps me on the inside, but it also helps with Instagram. And I feel like that's another thing that really fuels me is the possibilities that Instagram holds, where it's like I can share this project that I just put together and who knows where it's going to go, like I've had people DM me that I'm like, what? You found my page? Like, are you kidding me? You know what I mean? And like, that really keeps me excited because that's one thing that we have access to now that I feel like wasn't there years ago, where it's like Instagram is basically our own little portfolio that we're in charge of.
I feel like everything that you're saying that you've been working on, I can see it. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
you've really hit your stride. You can see
Yeah.
your creativity shine through, and everything that you put out looks so different than anything else that I'm
Thank
seeing.
you.
And I
That
think it's
means
because
so
it's
much to
you.
me. Yeah.
It's authentically you creatively directing everything. And I think that that's going to push you in this whole
Well,
industry far outside of quarantine. Like, this is
that
just the
is
beginning.
such a compliment. Thank you. Because that's one of those things where it's like, all you can do is your best. And standing out in this industry is so hard because there's so many amazing people, which is great. And I'm loving that, the industry is kind of creating so many different areas for so many different people, which is great, but it's still at the end of the day, like, how am I going to make myself stand out from all of these others, And for me, it's like, look, I've always been somebody who likes being different. When I was like in 5th grade, I wanted to stand out because everybody was getting Crocs. The Crocs were the thing with the giblets. Okay. And I was like, how am I going to stand out? So I wore one light blue Croc and one dark blue Croc at every time. I was like, I'm going to do mismatched Crocs because I don't want to have the same thing as everybody else. And like, that is something that I think about all the time because I'm like, why was I like that? But that's always just been me. I'm like, what can I do that's different? And it's more so a thing of like, it's not that I don't like fitting in because I definitely love, trends. But at the same time, I'm like, I always like to put my own little spin on things.
And you had said something about just kind of growing into like a girl to a woman in the last year and waking up. Like you said, our innocence is kind of gone because I think that there's a lot of blessings that have come out of 2020 and out of quarantine. I love your perspective on that. And I think one of the blessings is that we've all taken a step back and realized what we've been overlooking for a really long time. Mm-hmm. And I think you in particular have really turned your social media to be a voice, whether it's for the planet or social injustice or whatever it might be. So I'd love for you to talk a little bit about just your eyes being opened this year and kind of some of the stuff that you're seeing.
Yeah. I mean, this year you hit the nail on the head where it's just like our innocence was stripped. And I feel like I've been one of those people who was not involved in anything like that because I chose that I wanted to see the world, as rainbows and butterflies, because I almost did that in a way to protect myself and my innocence and my positivity. And it's like, if I know everything that's going on, I'm not going to be the same. And that basically happened this year, which is why I went from girl to woman. And of course, it's sad at some point, but it's very necessary because, before this, never involved myself in politics, did not watch the news, didn't care to talk about anything negative that was going on because I was like, there's so much bad in the world, but there's so much more good. And while that's still true, you have to be in the know. You have to know what's going on because there was so much that I didn't know. And, with everything going on with Black Lives Matter and police brutality, I had no idea, which sounds ridiculous. I know, because I'm half Black, half white. And it's like, people would look at me and be like, are you serious? You didn't know what was going on? And for a moment when this all first started, I was a little embarrassed of the lack of knowledge that I had, because for me, I would hear about, some of these incidents that would go down with people and the police. And I was like, oh, I'm sure the police got taken care of. I'm sure they're in jail. You know what I mean? And I never followed up on it. I just thought, well, it would make sense that the police officers would go to prison. So I'm sure that's what happened because the system can't be fucked up.
Yeah.
lo and behold, everything came to light this year. And I was like, whoa, 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 wait, what? Those people didn't go to jail. Those people are still on the force. They're normal. They're back with their, like, and these people are just dead. And so it was one of those, like, just such a strange feeling of everything just coming to light. And I was like, whoa, it got really dark and overwhelming for me because I just started to hear about everything. And I realized that everything that I thought that I knew was so wrong. And that's when I kind of was like, oh shit, like the system is really flawed. And I had no idea. And this is why people are so upset. And this is why people, have been upset. This is not the first incident. George Floyd is not the first person to start this uproar. This has been going on for way too long. And I just got upset with myself in a sense because I was like, I've been around people who've tried to explain this to me and I just wasn't listening. And that made me upset. But, it's one of those things where it's like you have to learn at some point. A lot of people were getting upset with a lot of people, especially white people, for not knowing what was going on and or understanding. And I was like, I am not mad because I'm one of those people who's just now waking up and I'm half Black. You know what I mean? And it's one of those things where it's hard to fully be affected by something if it's not personally affecting your daily life. And
Wow.
for me, I was like, I've been lucky to grow up in a neighborhood, in a lifestyle where I didn't experience much racism. And so for me, I had been taught to respect the police officers, smile at them, not because it would save my life, but just because they're out there, doing their job. So I had just kind of was like bamboozled when I was starting to hear about all of this injustice that was going on because I was like, everything is starting to change. The ways that I was grown up and taught to be is starting to change for me. And so that was kind of the thing where I was like, okay, this never affected me until now. And then I really started to open my eyes. I have a younger brother who's 18 and he's like 6'5", big guy, and he's my baby brother. But when I started to think that a police officer or a racist person or anybody could look at him and see him as a threat, I was like, oh my fucking God. That was when everything started to get real. And that was when I could relate it to myself. And we started having these conversations where he was filling me in on, incidents and situations that he had already experienced at 18 that I had never heard of. And I was like, whoa, everything just got real. I don't even know, fight with myself where I was like, dude, you got to do better. But also being gentle with myself because it's like, you didn't know any better. You know what I mean? And so I really just had to kind of take that and be like, okay, what am I going to do now? And I basically started writing during the riots. And I was trying to kind of take situations in my life or experiences that I had gone through and write them in very detailed ways to kind of open other people's eyes. Because, like I said, it's really hard to be affected by something that doesn't personally affect you. So I kind of started writing about the one time that I was called the N word and how it really was like fucking eye opening. And you know what I mean? Like, so I ended up writing about it and sharing it because I was like, you know what? It is very hard to just read a headline and be like, whoa, that's gonna stick with me for life. You know what I mean? Like it has to be something real. And I was like, okay, everybody who follows me likes me. They care about me as a person to some extent, And if they see like, wow, Sophia has dealt with this, like people that you don't know what's going on in people's lives. And again, I am incredibly grateful to not have grown up and experienced much racism, but I felt like if I could people who are like, oh, well, she's half white, so she, you don't get it or it doesn't relate to you. And that was something that I grew up with a lot where it's like, oh, those Black kids. And I'd be like, what? My friends are like, oh, not you. You're Bahamian. You don't count, And it's always one of those things where it's like, you don't count. So, they don't think of me or they don't think of my brother as somebody who could get pulled over by a police officer and, whatever. And so I just decided to try to write these things down to convey them and have people read them and be like, oh, wow, this actually connects, because for me, nothing really hit me until like Ahmaud Arbery. And I read about him, a young Black man who was just going for a jog. And my brother had just started getting into a running phase where he liked going for jogs. And I was like, whoa. And it takes that, one thing to really stick with you. And then you can't think about anything else. And that was when I was like, nope, this is it. This is real. And this has got to something's got to give. All my life, I had grown up where it was, if I tried to speak up, it was, you don't get it. You're not Black. You don't get it, And so I just kind of like silenced myself where it was like, okay, I'm just going to be over here. You know what I mean? And being mixed is such an interesting thing because I'm half white and I'm half Black, and you don't fit in really. You're not white and you're not Black. And, it's just one of those things where you're like, I'm a little bit of both, but some people don't like you for that. And that was something where, again, it kind of caused me to silence myself because I was like, well, I can't really speak up because I'm a little bit of both and I haven't really experienced certain things. But this year, it was one of those eye-opening moments where it was like, everybody's voice matters. The whole point is to get everybody fired up talking about this and standing up for what's going on. We can't be over here pointing fingers talking about, well, you're white, you shouldn't have anything to say, or you're mixed, you shouldn't have anything to say, or you didn't grow up here. It's like, no, we need to stop telling people to be quiet. If you're trying to stand up for something, let them do it. And so my kind of point was to applaud everybody, white people, mixed people, Black people who had never experienced this or never realized what was actually going on, who decided they wanted to start speaking up and actually fighting for the cause. And I was like, we have to stop belittling people for not knowing or for not have been understanding it sooner. It's like whenever we all wake up, you got to go with that. You know what I mean? Like, let them wake up and be excited that they're here to start the fight, to fight with you in their eyes right now, because I'm one of them. And that might be surprising, but it's true.
I love
and the more
that
people
ownership
that we have. Yeah. And again, it was embarrassing in a sense because I was like, I should have known better, like I should have known this a while ago, but I didn't. And, that was one of those things where it was like, okay, Sophia's over here living in, rainbows and sunshine land because she doesn't think anything bad's going on. And of course, I'm grateful to have grown up in a childhood where I could feel like that, but at the same time, it's time to grow up. It's time to realize that shit's actually happening out there and life is not fair and the system is not fair, and we got to work on that. So it's time now, like we all have to wake up at some point, and this is the year to do it.
I resonate with so much of what you were saying. And once you wake up, you can't go back to sleep. If that makes sense. It's like, and I was in a very similar position to you that it's like, all the information was there. I just didn't know it. And a lot of that is my fault for not researching. A lot of it is just kind of what we've almost been programmed to do, because I think up until 2020, if something's been very uncomfortable to talk about, people avoid that conversation.
Exactly.
And they've been able to.
Yeah.
Like people just kind of hide in what they think, what their thoughts, their feelings, their opinions, what the facts are. And they surround themselves around people that think the way that they think. And that's how our society goes on. And that's why I love our generation and the generation below us. It's like, we don't want to do that anymore.
Exactly. We're like, no, it's either,
we're going to talk about it. We're going to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I'm curious, what were conversations with your family like? Were your parents kind of surprised by the conversation? Were they excited that you guys were having the conversation? What did that look like for you?
It was really interesting because my mom is from the Bahamas. So it was one of those things where she didn't really know how bad police brutality or any of these things were because it wasn't like that on her island. And although she's lived in, the United States longer than she's lived in the Bahamas, she hasn't experienced any of that. So that was never apparent for her even until this year, And so that was an interesting thing too, because it was a wake-up call for her in a sense where she was like, what? Like, I've never thought a certain way about police officers, and I've never necessarily worried for James until this year. And the same goes for my dad. He's white, so it was really an eye opener for him. Like, he had always known it more than my mom. Like, he could sense things, if he would get pulled over and my brother was in the car, or certain things, he could feel it out. And he's had certain worries more than my mom has in that sense. And he really went hard using his Facebook. He's a Facebook guy. So he was going in, like really just giving great information to the people that, follow him, in a sense, because we're from a small town in Southern Illinois. So if you can imagine, it's not super diverse, but the town that we're in is diverse, thankfully, because it's a college town. But there's a lot of surrounding towns that are interesting. So it was kind of cool for him to be able to be like, look, I'm telling you how it is. I've got 2 kids that are Black in the eyes of America, and this is going on. Like, if you love my kids, if you see them and you're like, these are amazing kids, imagine something bad happening to them, because that's what's going on in America. Great kids, great young adults, great, men and women are getting killed on the spot because of the way that they look. Nobody's looking at them. Police officers aren't looking at them. They're like, oh, well, they're half white, or, oh, they come from a good family, or, oh, this guy, likes to bird watch. They're just seeing Black skin. And it's like, if you can't wrap your head around that, let me help you, So he was really going hard on that. My mom was going hard on that as well. And again, like, the conversations I was having with my brother were so different than conversations that most people would have with their 18-year-old siblings. It's not like, oh, what are you doing? It's like, hey, if you get pulled over, like, please, just do what you've got to do, and it's like, that was not fun. Those conversations got really heavy on top of being in a pandemic. And I hadn't seen them in months because of the pandemic. So we're going through all of this and we're not together. And it was really hard. And then, and then it was another thing because Dylan and I were starting to have conversations where it was like, look, I need to make sure that you understand what's going on and you see what's happening, and thankfully Dylan has always been very aware, but he became even more aware and felt it necessary to, have conversations with his family and making sure that their eyes were open, where he was like, look, one day I'm going to have kids that are Black, and this is going to be a reality for you. So don't just only care when it has to do with you. You need to start seeing these people as Sophia's, or, her little brother James, or my future kids. It's like, you need to start seeing these people for people. It should affect us all. Everybody needs to sit here and think about the people that they love in their lives that are, of different races, and start putting them in the positions of what these headlines are, because it could happen if we don't get this fixed, So I got closer to some people. I got rid of some people in my life because I was just like, look, this isn't the time to be just a sitting duck. Like, you've got to be fucking pissed off with what's happening. And if you're not, and life is still good, we can't be buddies, because you're not there. Like, 2020 is the year. If you didn't wake up and get fucking pissed, can't be your friend, because there's so much to be pissed off about, so much to get fired up about, so much to be like, we got to get some fucking change going on. If you're not one of those, I'm like, see ya, because you're still on another planet. If we've learned anything this year, it's that every voice does matter. Every voice does count. And we can make a change when we come together. And that's been such an awesome thing to see this year, especially because we've all been apart. The fact that we can still come together in some ways to make change has been really inspiring this year. January 1st, 2020, than who I'm going to be January 1st, 2021. Like, I've never experienced a growth like this. And it has been ugly. It's been beautiful. Like, there's been so many moments, so many highs and lows, which, plays a huge role in any type of growth.
Growth is never comfortable. Growth is never easy.
No. And I feel
especially growth on so many different levels, like we have experienced this year.
Yeah. And I kind of tell everybody, I'm like, look, no matter what happened this year, you have gone through so much and you've grown in ways that you might not even know yet. So don't be hard on yourself. None of us have experienced a pandemic before. None of us. Maybe some of our grandparents, but us, we have never experienced that before. So however you dealt with that, and if you're, here to tell the tale, like, you should be proud of yourself.
But I am glad that the normal that we were used to is going to look so much different when things are normal again, because we're going to have a whole society that more than half of us are wide awake. The other half, I'm not quite sure what they're doing, but they'll get there. Hopefully. It's crazy. It's a crazy roller coaster right now. But you know what? Like you said, even at the very beginning of this, right before I hit record, you're like, life's a blessing. Let's take a deep breath. And it's really like little reminders like that. Whenever you're starting to feel very overwhelmed and out of control and crazy and thinking about the facts of what's actually happening, like the power of taking a deep breath and counting like 3 blessings, change your life.
Huge life. It's beautiful. And it's just one of those things where it's like, you know what? We're here. We got to make the most of every day and just be grateful for the little things that we can take for granted, because so many don't even have the things that we don't even think twice about, and it's like, you just have to really kind of like tap in real quick. Before I complain, I am so grateful for all of these things, and that will keep you grateful and it'll keep you humble, in those moments where it's easy to kind of lose it. But
I'm going to listen to that next time I'm having my moment.
You know what? We all need to hear a little something, but
we do. Girl. Well, like I said at the very beginning, I think you're the coolest person ever. And the fact that I just got an hour with you, I'm like, I'm going to start making you come on like regularly. So
I'm down to do this once a week. I'm so proud of you. You are such a cool and inspiring woman. You're just doing such awesome things. And to be able to just have a conversation with somebody like you is just so awesome, And another reason I'm so grateful to the modeling industry, because it's like that world has introduced me to so many incredible people who are more than just models, who are doing all of these things. They're all around great women, inspiring people. They've got degrees or they're doing these really cool projects. And I'm like, wow, how cool, that I get to experience people like you in my life. And I'm like, so grateful for that. I'm going to go buy a sweatshirt now or something. One of those new things. I need to rock it.
You're the best.
Air hug.
So there you have it. I hope you got just as much out of this episode as I did. Please take a second to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It helps us so much. And remember, you are more than whatever label's been placed upon you. We'll see you next week.